Hey y'all, welcome to Restless Chipotle Kitchen. Well, here in Texas, it's super cold today. We've got ice coming down outside and we're supposed to have snow. It's crazy weather for around here. And when it's cold, there's nothing that I like better than a creamy soup. And today, I'm going to show you how to make the bread bowls. So we're going to need flour, and it's best if you use bread flour, but I'm using all-purpose flour here and you can too, no problem. You're going to need sugar, yeast. This is Good Season's Italian dressing mix, and I'm using this instead of salt to flavor the bread. If you're not going to use a Good Season's Italian dressing mix, go ahead and use 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. An egg, and the egg doesn't actually go in the bread, it gets brushed on the outside of the bread to give it that really golden, glossy crust that we all like. And then water, and the water needs to be between 110 or 115 degrees on a digital Insta-Read thermometer. If you don't have one of those, you can put your finger in it and it should feel like warm bath water, no warmer than what you would put a baby in, okay? It just needs to be nice and warm. One thing that you may notice is missing from this is either butter or oil. The reason is that we don't want to have a real tender, soft crumb. We're going to take that out anyway so that we can put our stew or our soup in. What we want is a crispy, dense crust to hold the soup in. What we're going to do is we're going to take, excuse me, all of the bread out of the round, and we're not going to use that. Now, you can use that for breadcrumbs, you can use it for croutons. If you're putting a dip in your bread bowl, you can use it to dip in the dip. I guess that makes sense. But no oil, no butter. None needed in this recipe. No milk needed in this recipe. We don't want to do anything to make the bread softer, okay? First thing we're going to do is put the yeast and the water in this bowl. And we're not going to wait for it to proof because we don't need to. On some things I prefer to wait for it to proof, but this isn't one of those things. Once we do that, we're going to add the sugar and 1 cup of the flour. And then we're going to stir that around. And I'm just going to use the paddle on this. It's not ready for the dough hook, okay? So I'm going to pull that up, and I'm just going to stir that for just a minute. The reason that I'm not putting the salt in yet, or the salt or the Italian dressing in yet, is because I like to get the yeast coated with flour before we add the salt. All right, it doesn't need to be a lot of mixing, just a quick mix like that. Now we're going to add in the Italian dressing, and we're going to add in 2 more cups of flour. So there's 1. Put the bowl down, it makes it easier to get in there, doesn't it? And 2. And then I'm going to mix that up. Now while we're mixing that, we're going to start adding more flour. So we're going to continue to use the paddle, and we're going to add about 3 more cups of flour, or until it looks like the paddle is not going to mix it anymore and I need to switch to the dough hook. Now I'm going to switch from the paddle to the dough hook. You can see that, let me get this out so you can see. You can see that the dough is very sticky and it's not, there's no way you could knead that. It's just a mess, but it is getting to be too thick and too elastic for the dough hook, or for the paddle. So I'm just going to take that off. Make sure that I get as much of the dough as possible. Then I'm going to switch to the dough hook and continue to mix on the first power, the lowest setting, while I'm adding flour until it's soft and slightly sticky, but it's ready to be kneaded, and I will show you when it gets to that. Okay, the dough is soft and a little sticky, and it is sticking to the sides a little bit, but I don't think we need any more flour in this. I just think it needs to be kneaded. So, isn't there a song like that, needs to be kneaded? I'm going to scrape the sides down to get all of the flour into there, and then I'm going to turn the mixer back on. Now when I turn the mixer back on, I'm going to turn it on to the second speed because we're kneading, and I'm going to knead it for about 5 to 7 minutes until it's smooth and elastic. Okay, I think that's about right. Now we're going to take it out of the bowl. Take this off. And take it out of the bowl, and as you can see, it's still kind of soft and still kind of sticky, but it's starting to be elastic. And I'm going to put it on a slightly floured counter just because I like to hand knead it for just a minute or two just to make sure that we have it. And that is a fabulous texture. So we're going to round it up into a ball. Put it in a greased bowl and turn to grease the top. Turn it again. And then I'm going to cover that with a clean tea towel and leave it to rise for about 30 minutes. So I'll see you back here then. Okay, y'all, it's been 30 minutes and the dough has, as you can see, has doubled. So what we're going to do now is punch down the dough. Don't get aggressive with this. You really only need to fold it over. You really don't want to take out all of the air bubbles. Just fold it a little bit very gently until you've deflated it a little bit. Then we're going to take it out and attempt to cut it into 6 equal pieces. I say attempt because, as we all know, I'm not great at being exact at this. Right? We'll say 1, 2, 3. That one's a little small. This is what happens all the time. I have to take from one and give to the other. But I think those are about the same size. And then 1, 2, and this one is quite big. So I told you I wasn't good at this. What I'm going to do is just make an extra one. So these won't be quite as big as what they're supposed to be, but it's all right. We're gonna smooth them out. And to me, the best way to smooth them out and to get a good round ball with a smooth top is to push your fingers in like that and then bring it around and pull your fingers out. Just kind of makes it smooth on the top. And we'll put those right on the cookie sheet. Now, while you're doing this, or just before you do this, you're going to want to switch the oven to 500 degrees. What it's going to do is it's going to really crisp up the crust very quickly, and then we're going to turn it down a little bit so it can finish baking. And as I said, don't worry if you get some bigger than the others, because I do too. The only way to get these even is to use a kitchen scale, and although I do have one, I didn't feel like pulling it out. So if you want to be exact, use a kitchen scale. All right, and then we have this one, which I am going to put right here. So I'm going to cover these back up with a kitchen towel, and I'm going to let them sit on the counter for 15 minutes to rise again. All right, I'll see y'all back here in 15 minutes. Okay, these have risen really well, and they're going to rise more in the oven. But what we're going to do now, this is 1 whole egg with about a teaspoon of water in it, and I'm going to brush the tops of these really well with the egg. This is going to give them kind of a golden brown crispy crust, which is going to keep that soup sealed in. It's easy to do, doesn't take much time. The egg coats the bread as it bakes. It makes it crispy, and it gets more golden brown than it would without it. But you can't taste it, so if you don't like egg, it's not, you're not going to taste it. It doesn't flavor it. If you're allergic to eggs, then you probably won't want to do this. You can just do it without the egg if you're allergic to eggs. It'll be fine. Not quite as golden brown and crispy, but fine. Next, we're just going to take a very sharp knife and slash an X in the top. And you want to do this gently because you don't want to deflate the bread at this point. Just like that. Just like that. Now, as it rises in the oven, these are going to allow it to open up. Okay, it's ready to go in the oven. I'm going to bake it for about 2 to 3 minutes at 500, and then I'm going to lower the temperature to 425 and bake until about 10 to 15 more minutes. Okay, y'all, taking this right out of the oven now. It's really hot. I put a sheet of aluminum foil over it. I didn't seal it in about halfway through because I felt like they were getting too brown too quickly, but they came out so beautiful, such a beautiful color. And so now what we're going to do is we're just going to let them cool completely before we take the centers out to make our bowls. Okay, so that's not going to take too long. My kitchen's pretty cold, so I'll see you back here when we're ready to do that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cut around so that we can pull out the insides. And all you need to do is cut around with a very sharp knife, cut around like this, right around the top. Just like that. And then, be careful, then pull the top right off. And then just start pulling the bread that's inside. You're just going to start pulling it out. You'll want to leave about a 1/2 inch in here, a 1/2 inch edge, so that the soup or your stew won't soak through the wall. I'll usually leave a thicker layer in the bottom because I think that that's where it would tend to soak through more, but there it is. And you can make the top bigger if you want. I like it kind of small, it holds in the heat. You can make these bigger than this so that you could have a bigger bread bowl, or you could make one big and put spaghetti in there if you wanted to. But that's the basis of it. That's pretty much how it is. And then the bread that you pull out, you can eat because it's delicious, or you can make breadcrumbs or croutons or whatever. If you're going to make croutons out of it, you need to pull it out a little more carefully than what I'm doing. Okay, so there's that. Now I like to keep these in some little shallow bowls just in case some of the soup seeps out. It's just better that way, I think, than to have it on a plate where it could like seep out and go everywhere. The other thing about this is that you do not want to fill them with the soup until everybody's sitting at the table, because if it sits around, eventually it is going to get mushy. So let's put our soup in here. Fill that right up. Some creamy soup, and there it is. We've got our very own soup, bread bowl soup for soup, or anything else you want to put in it. You can garnish it with some cheese on the top and then melt it. There's all kinds of things you can do, and it's really just delicious. I hope you'll try it. Okay, y'all, this is so good. The soup stays hot in there, and it's just fun and just delicious. So I hope you're going to give it a try, okay? The kind of soups that do the best in here are thicker, creamier soups, chowders, potato soup, anything that's rich and creamy, or a stew does really well in here, chili, and you name it. I would be careful about putting something like chicken noodle soup in there, because it's likely to seep through the edges a lot faster than one of the creamier soups. So I hope you'll give it a try, and thank y'all for being here. I love y'all, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.